So in the Naruto community, to some extent the anime community as a whole, it's easy to see that Boruto is a very hated anime, to some extent character as well. In this video, I'll be mostly discussing Boruto's character and to some extent the anime as well, as a reference for some of the points that I'm going to be bringing up. This is to see if Boruto actually deserves the criticism that I actually received. That being said, if you guys liked the video, make sure to hit the thumbs up button, leave some feedback for me in the comments, and hit that sub button for more content. Let's start by listing a few things that people don't actually like about Boruto that I'll be addressing in the video. First up, we got Naruto and Boruto comparisons. 2, he's spoiled. 3, he's lazy. 4, everything comes easy to him, and then 5, and finally Boruto is ungrateful. Let's start off with the comparisons between Naruto and Boruto. So a lot of people like to compare Boruto to Naruto, and that's completely understandable, as a lot of people who are watching Boruto most likely grew up watching Naruto, like myself. What I think a lot of people don't realize is that Boruto and Naruto are both mirror images of each other. Naruto is a rags to riches story, in other words someone who has nothing and grows up to have everything, while Boruto is quite the opposite. This character is a riches to rags story, in other words someone who has everything and goes on to have nothing. Speaking of Boruto, I'd also consider him a reversal of the typical shonen protagonist, which I'll get into later in the video. Boruto and Naruto being mirrored images of each other can be seen from a multitude of perspectives. For example, their backstory. Naruto was someone who was ostracized and hated by the entire village due to him being a Jinchuriki, while no one knew who was the 4th Hokage's son. And itself is a giant plot hole, which I'll probably be going over in a different video, but nonetheless, that's not the point of this video. Anyways, Boruto on the other hand is someone who is loved and accepted by the entire village because he is a Hokage's son. Another great example would be their combat abilities. Naruto struggled with the most basic of jutsu, like the simple clone jutsu back in the day from the academy. To some extent, the shadow clone jutsu as well. Boruto is quite the opposite. He has a lot of things come naturally easy to him due to him being a prodigy. I'll go over him being a prodigy later in the video as well, but for now I wanted to ask if it's really fair to compare Boruto to Naruto. The reason why I asked this is because both Naruto and Boruto are two completely different people living in two completely different eras. Instead of looking at Boruto through the lens of what Naruto went through, we should be looking at Boruto through the lens of what he's going through, if that makes sense. It'll be easy to explain that by moving into the next point that I brought up earlier, which is Boruto being spoiled. And in this point, actually, I'll be mixing a few different points that I mentioned earlier, which is Boruto being lazy, Boruto being spoiled, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, the Naruto and Boruto comparisons. Boruto is a kid. Kids, quite frankly, are often spoiled and lazy. The reason why most kids are spoiled is because generally speaking, their parents work so hard so the kids don't have to go through the same struggles as they did. And Naruto is a perfect example of this. Naruto, as mentioned earlier, was an orphan and ostracized by the village. He also lived in a time where war could break out just by someone farting in the wrong direction. And it's thanks to him, but realistically Madara, but that's for another video, who created a world of peace, and that is exactly the world Boruto is living in now. Boruto doesn't learn about what his father went through until the Momoshiki invasion, so he only sees him as the Hokage and the person who never comes home. As a kid, could you possibly understand why your father would choose to work at a job for so long instead of being with his family? This also ties into why he's lazy. Boruto was portrayed as lazy at the beginning of the show because he doesn't have a set goal, unlike Naruto. Naruto from the beginning wanted to be a Hokage. Literally every arc he would scream at the top of his lungs he wanted to become a Hokage, and honestly it kind of got annoying. But anyways, Boruto saw what his father has to do for the village and doesn't want to become Hokage and be stuck with spending time away from his family if he were to raise one in the future. As far as his laziness, Boruto never really had to deal with the things that Naruto had to deal with growing up to prove himself. So he takes the easy way out initially using the ninja tools to cheat. Eventually he learns to work hard, but it was after Naruto embarrassed him in front of everyone and he wanted to become a great ninja that could support the Hokage like his mentor Sasuke. Another reason why he's lazy as well, because he's a prodigy, and prodigies never really have to work as hard as others. It's also because of where he lives right now, the Leaf Village, why he doesn't have to go through so many trials and tribulations like Naruto did. So this is going to jump into the next point, which is everything coming easy to him, but let's go ahead and just move right into it. The reason why, because he's in the Leaf Village, he doesn't have to go through the same trials and tribulations because he has everything he would ever need in the Leaf Village to help him with his journey. Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura all had to seek out the legendary Sannin in order to get stronger. Now, to be fair, Sakura didn't really have to go anywhere because Tsunade was already in the village, so I'll give you guys that point. But when it comes to Boruto, I want you guys to really think of who is in the village with him in the current times. He has the current Hokage and his dad Naruto, who can train him occasionally. He also then has his current mentor Sasuke, who both him and Naruto are the strongest ninja in the entire shinobi world, literally. So of course, with the training between those two, of course he's going to be as strong as he is, and everything is going to come a lot easier to him. Besides them, let's look at who else is in the village. The greatest taijutsu users in the world, Rock Lee, for training, although that sounds tiring. There's also the greatest medical and support ninja in Sakura, and say what you want about Sakura, but medical ninjutsu isn't anything to laugh at. I mean, look at what Kabuto managed to do to Tsunade. He can literally go home at any point and ask his mom, you know, the best and strongest Hyuga alive at the moment, for help at any point, and since she's staying at home and retired, she has the time to train him. Also, let's not forget about Kakashi, who literally trained the best ninja alive in the world currently. Enough, Kakashi at the time of this video is actually training Boruto, so it works out perfectly. Being a prodigy means he's going to pick things up fast, but that doesn't mean he's not going to have his own share of struggles. When you compare the villains that Boruto is facing now against the villains part 1 Naruto was facing, it makes complete sense why he's learning all these high-ranking jutsu. If we exclude the manga, Boruto has gone up against 2 Atsuki clan members, one of them being Momoshiki and the other being Urashiki, and both of them were giving both Naruto and Sasuke some trouble. Now, if you're comparing the actual human opponents, the 2 biggest that come to mind are Juga with his curse mark, as well as Deepa in the current arc. Deepa took no damage from a Rasengan, even being caught off guard. And say what you want, but that's a feat in itself. Now, because of that, both Boruto and Sarada are in a training arc, and that's why I kind of mentioned why Kakashi is training them. But nonetheless, in this training, Boruto is trying to learn something that might allow him to damage Deepa. He manages to learn something that resembles a mini Rasen Shuriken with little to no effort, but that's due to him already knowing about chakra natures, which at the time when Naruto was trying to learn a Rasen Shuriken, he really didn't know anything about it. In comparison to Naruto's Rasen Shuriken, it's not even that strong because it wasn't even able to destroy a mini boulder. And even though it's a Rasen Shuriken, like a mini one, Rasen Shuriken is still a move that Naruto needed in order to beat Pain, and that should say how strong Deepa actually is, even if it is a mini one. Anyways, let's go ahead and move into the next point, which is Boruto being ungrateful. Now, a lot of people like to say Boruto is also ungrateful for everything he has. We kind of touched on this earlier, but basically the reason why people say he is ungrateful is because they're comparing him to Naruto and only looking at Naruto's perspective. Naruto is a hard-working parent stuck in the office helping the village, and he tries his hardest to give what he can to Boruto and the rest of his family. This kind of ties into what I said about Boruto being somewhat spoiled, but the reason why Boruto gets upset at Naruto isn't because Naruto is his dad, but because Naruto is the Hokage. By being Hokage, Naruto doesn't get to spend time with his family, and that's what Boruto doesn't like. In other words, why would his father choose a job over, for example, his daughter's birthday? Now, this pretty much was only at the beginning of the series, as this gets completely fleshed out after the Momoshiki fight, and more specifically, the time travel arc for both Naruto and Boruto. At the beginning of the series, you see Boruto deface the 7th Hokage's face, as well as numerous other things to get his dad's attention. Before the birthday party scene, where we see Shikamaru tell Naruto that he can go home and see his family, but Naruto instead sends a shadow clone. The reason why Boruto starts to change during the Momoshiki's fight is because he finally starts to see why the Hokage is so important to the village, after Naruto nearly takes his own life in order to defend the village from Momoshiki's death ball thingy. Now, while Naruto is in Momoshiki's dimension and having his chakra extracted as well, he starts having some self-reflection, even saying something along the lines of, I could have done things differently with Boruto and his entire family. Now, the biggest change to this for Boruto is in the time skip arc, where he literally sees how Naruto grows up from eating nothing but ramen and living in a terrible apartment to also seeing how Naruto couldn't even control his own power, specifically the Nine Tails, and at one point even attacked Boruto in his Kyuubi form. After this arc comes the Mujina Bandits arc, and in this arc, Boruto meets a kid named Tento, and this kid happens to be the feudal lord's son. Tento is a very spoiled kid. We could see this as the kid literally uses a card that his dad gave him to buy whatever he wanted, because just like Naruto, he doesn't have enough time to spend with him. It's because of this card, Tento really never has to work for anything, and it's not until he meets Boruto who actually starts to train him. I believe the reason for this was because just like how Boruto likes to collect Shinobi cards, well, so does Tento, and it just so happens he has to have a card that Boruto wanted. What I don't think a lot of people understand about this arc is that it's a showing for how far Boruto actually has come. Tento is literally a representation of the past Boruto. I also mentioned that Boruto is a reversal of the typical shonen protagonist, and the reason why I say that is because most shonen protagonists, they start off as the underdog and they don't have anything going for them. You could say this about Luffy, you could say this about obviously Naruto, Asta, Deku, etc. Boruto isn't an underdog. He literally has everything he needs at the very beginning. He reminds me a bit of Ichigo, but Ichigo was still kind of an underdog. Reason being is because Ichigo was human and he did have to work hard with the abilities he had. Granted, arguably harder than Naruto, but that's for a different video. Despite Boruto having all of this power, he's never really the one who goes around saving everybody. In fact, I'd argue most of his teammates are the ones who are saving him instead. This is really refreshing considering it's an industry standard at this point to have the MC come in and save everybody. Alright guys, so this was just a quick video on Boruto's character overall. I do think he has the potential to become one of the best new gen MCs, and if he's done correctly, he could potentially become a better character than Naruto. I'll make a part 2 on Boruto in the future after the anime catches up to the manga. If you guys like the video, by all means give it a thumbs up. If you guys want to review any of these demons, by all means let me know in the comments, as well as any feedback, and last but not least, hit that sub button for more content. Sorry this video took so long for me to get out, but nonetheless, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.